Shadows of success, Ethan. Blake's reflection stared back at him from the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office. At 38, he had built Horizon Technologies into a global empire worth billions. The New York skyline spread beneath, him like a kingdom, with lights twinkling in reverence to their corporate overlord. The board approved the Singapore acquisition, his assistant Julian reported from the doorway. Unanimous vote. Ethan merely nodded. He hadn't expected otherwise. Fear and respect were currencies he understood perfectly. Emotions were not. And your father called again. 3 times today. A muscle twitched in Ethan's jaw. Schedule a dinner next week. He specifically mentioned that he wants to discuss family matters again. Of course he did. Harrison Blake, once a titan of industry, himself, now devoted his retirement to reminding Ethan of his familial failings. No wife, no children, no heir to the Blake legacy, just cold efficiency and a reputation that made rivals tremble. Fine, Ethan said. Tonight, then. Get it over with. 3 hours later, he sat across from his father at the exclusive Aureole, where Harrison dropped his bombshell. I've made arrangements. You'll be married by spring. Ethan nearly choked on his scotch. Excuse me? The Reeds. Old family connections. Their daughter needs a fresh start after some trouble with her ex-fiancé. You need a wife. It's elegant. It's medieval, Ethan countered. And illegal, Harrison waved dismissively. She's agreed to meet you. Sophia Reed, intelligent woman, art therapist or something. Works with troubled children. I don't have time for this. Make time, Harrison's voice hardened. The Blake Foundation's major donors are questioning your commitment. The company needs stability and leadership. Your bachelor lifestyle is becoming a liability. Ethan knew his father was right, even as he hated the admission. Perception mattered. In business, family men were trusted, lone wolves were not. One meeting, Ethan conceded. That meeting happened at a charity gala the following evening. Ethan spotted Sophia immediately. She stood out in the crowd of socialites like a wildflower among hothouse blooms. Her midnight blue dress was elegant, but simple. Her chestnut hair swept into a loose updo that suggested she had better things to do than fuss over appearances. Mr. Blake, she said when they were introduced, her handshake firm and direct. I understand we're being auctioned off like Renaissance nobles. Her bluntness caught him off guard. That's one way to put it. Here's my proposal, she continued. 1 year. Public appearances as needed, separate lives otherwise. In return, you fund a new art therapy center in the Bronx. My designs, my program. Ethan studied her. Most women batted their eyelashes at him, hoping for diamonds and status. Sophia Reed looked at him like he was a means to an end, nothing more. Why agree to this at all? He asked. Something flickered in her amber eyes. My reasons are my own. Do we have a deal? Later, his father explained the rest. Sophia's ex-fiancé had left her with crushing debt and a tarnished reputation in her professional circles. The marriage would give her a fresh start, and the Blake name would open doors. A business arrangement then. No messy emotions, no romantic expectations. I'll draw up the contracts, Ethan told his father. 1 month later, he married Sophia Reed in a private ceremony. The society pages called it a whirlwind romance. Ethan called it strategic planning. Little did he know that strategies often fail when the human heart enters the equation. Walls of glass. The Blake penthouse sprawled across the top floor of a sleek Manhattan high-rise, all minimalist design and stark elegance. Like its owner, the space was impressive but cold, chrome, glass, and monochrome surfaces that reflected, rather than absorbed, light. Sophia stood in what was now technically her home, running her fingertips along the spotless kitchen counter. 2 weeks into their arrangement, and she still felt like an intruder in a museum. The housekeeper comes. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, Ethan said, scrolling through emails on his phone. Julian will coordinate any social engagements that require both our attendance. The guest bedroom has been prepared for you. Sophia nodded, wondering if he practiced sounding so detached or if it came naturally. And which rooms are off limits? His eyes flicked up, narrowing slightly. Excuse me? In arrangements like ours, people usually establish boundaries. I'd like to know where I'm not welcome. Something that might have been surprise crossed his face. You have access to the entire apartment. Just maintain order. Of course. Heaven forbid a throw pillow be out of place. His jaw tightened at her sarcasm. I have a conference call. We'll discuss the Foundation Gala tomorrow. With that, he retreated to his office, the door closing with a soft but definitive click. Sophia exhaled slowly. This was going to be a long year. The next morning, she woke early and padded to the kitchen, surprised to find Ethan already there, reviewing documents at the island counter. Coffee? She offered, reaching for the expensive machine. Black, he replied, without looking up. As she placed the steaming cup beside him, she noticed the documents, blueprints for what appeared to be a new Horizon Technologies campus. That looks impressive, she ventured. It's efficient, he corrected. The layout maximizes productivity while reducing energy consumption. Sophia leaned closer. But where are the communal spaces? The areas for collaboration, creativity? Ethan's expression suggested she'd asked about installing a roller coaster. Those are unnecessary distractions. Humans aren't machines, Mr. Blake. They need connection to thrive. Ethan, he corrected automatically. And in my experience, excessive socialization decreases output. Sophia fought the urge to roll her eyes. No wonder they call you the Ice King of Tech. His gaze snapped to hers. Excuse me? It's what the staff at the Foundation called you at the gala. I assumed you knew. Something flickered in his eyes, not hurt exactly, but awareness. Then it was gone, sealed behind his impenetrable facade. Names don't concern me, results do. 3 days later, Sophia transformed one corner of the vast living room, bringing in colorful cushions, art supplies, and a small easel. When Ethan returned from work, he stopped short at the sight. What is this? My workspace, Sophia explained, putting the finishing touches on a vibrant watercolor. I'm developing new approaches for the therapy center. He frowned at the splash of color, disrupting his monochrome kingdom. There's a study down the hall. Too isolated. Art thrives on light and life. Before he could object further, his phone rang. Another crisis at the office. Another late night. The pattern continued for weeks. Sophia brought warmth and disorder. Ethan retreated into work and rigid control. They circled each other like cautious animals, their brief interactions formal and strained. Until the Foundation Gala, where they had to present a united front. Sophia wore a stunning emerald gown that made even Ethan pause when she emerged from her room. Acceptable? She asked, a hint of challenge in her voice. More than, he admitted, surprising them both. Throughout the evening, Sophia charmed board members and donors alike, her genuine interest in their conversations, a stark contrast to Ethan's practiced networking. He found himself watching her, puzzled by how effortlessly she connected with others. Later, as they returned home in his private car, an unexpected question escaped him. How do you do that? Do what? She asked, gazing out at the city lights. Make people respond to you, trust you. Sophia turned to him, her expression thoughtful. I see them as people, not opportunities or obstacles. Everyone has a story worth hearing. Even me? The question slipped out before he could stop it. Her eyes met his, searching. Especially you, Ethan Blake, but your walls are made of glass, transparent enough to see there's something behind them, but too solid to reach through. For the first time in years, Ethan Blake had no calculated response, no strategic redirect. Instead, he sat in silence, wondering what this woman might see if those walls ever came down. Unexpected thaw. The February storm hit New York with unexpected ferocity, battering skyscrapers with freezing rain and coating the city in treacherous ice. From the penthouse windows, the world below looked crystallized, beautiful but dangerous. Sophia, huddled under a blanket on the sofa, sketching plans for her therapy center while the wind howled outside. 3 months into their arrangement, she and Ethan had settled into a careful rhythm of polite coexistence. They shared breakfast silently most mornings, attended required social functions together, and otherwise maintained their separate orbits. Her phone buzzed with a text from her younger brother Thomas. Hospital understaffed due to storm. Double shift tonight. Check on Dad? Sophia sighed. Their father, William Reed, had been struggling with early-onset Parkinson's. Since the divorce, he lived alone in Queens, stubbornly independent despite his declining health. She was gathering her coat when Ethan emerged from his office, frowning at his phone. The Singapore investors have concerns about the merger. I need to fly out tonight. Sophia glanced toward the windows. In this storm, all flights must be grounded. Private jets have more flexibility, he replied, already messaging his assistant. I'll be gone 3 days at most. Something in his voice caught her attention, a ragged edge to his usually smooth tone. Looking closer, she noticed the unusual pallor of his skin, the slight tremor in his hands. Are you feeling all right? I'm fine, he said curtly, but the word ended in a suppressed cough. Sophia stepped closer, professional concern overriding their usual boundaries. You're not fine. You're running a fever. It's nothing. I've worked through worse. And probably infected half your staff in the process, she countered, reaching up to press her palm against his forehead. He flinched at the contact, but didn't. Pull away. You're burning up, Ethan. The deal won't close itself. The deal will still be there when you're not half dead from pneumonia, she insisted, guiding him firmly toward the sofa. Sit. I'm calling Dr. Winters. To her surprise, he complied, a testament to how truly awful he must have felt. Within an hour, the Blake family physician confirmed influenza, prescribed medication, and strongly advised against travel. That evening, Sophia faced a dilemma. Her father needed checking on, but Ethan's fever was climbing despite medication. After several calls, she arranged for her father's neighbor to look in on him, then turned her attention to her increasingly delirious husband. The Singapore numbers, Ethan muttered, trying to reach for his phone. Harrison will say I'm weak. Your father will understand that even billionaires get the flu, Sophia said, gently pressing him back against the pillows. Julian has rescheduled everything. Through the night, she monitored his fever, applied cool compresses, and ensured he stayed hydrated. By morning, Ethan had deteriorated further, his breathing labored, his usually sharp mind clouded with fever dreams. Mom, he called out once, his voice suddenly young and vulnerable. Don't go. Sophia felt her heart twist. She knew from background research that Ethan's mother had died when he was 12. Cancer, swift and merciless. Harrison Blake had responded by becoming even more driven, raising his son to believe vulnerability was failure. I'm here, she said softly, taking his burning hand. You're not alone. The storm raged for 2 more days, effectively trapping them in the penthouse. Sophia canceled her own appointments, focusing entirely on nursing Ethan through the worst of the illness. She read aloud from business journals when he was lucid, prepared simple broths when he could eat, and sat quietly beside him when nightmares seemed to plague his sleep. On the 3rd day, his fever finally broke. Sophia had fallen asleep in the chair beside his bed, her sketchbook fallen open on her lap. Ethan awoke to find his hand still loosely clasped in hers. For several minutes, he simply observed her, the gentle curve of her cheek, the slight furrow. Between her brows, even in sleep, the unguarded vulnerability of her expression. His gaze fell to the open sketchbook, surprised to find a detailed drawing of himself. Not the public persona of the ruthless CEO, but something softer, more human. When Sophia stirred and opened her eyes, she found him watching her with an expression she'd never seen before. "You stayed," he said simply. "Of course I stayed. Why?" The question contained no challenge, only genuine confusion. Sophia considered him for a long moment. "Because no one should face darkness alone." Something shifted in Ethan's eyes, a crack in the glacial surface, revealing depths neither had acknowledged before. He didn't have words to respond, but when Sophia moved to check his temperature, his fingers tightened slightly around hers, a silent gesture that said more than any practiced speech. Outside, the storm had finally passed, leaving the city glazed in ice that had already begun to melt under the emerging sun. Reflections in the rain April brought relentless spring showers to Manhattan, turning the city streets into rivers of reflected neon and umbrellas. Inside the penthouse, another kind of transformation was quietly unfolding. Since his illness, Ethan found himself noticing things about Sophia he'd previously overlooked. The way she hummed softly while sketching, her habit of leaving cups of half-finished tea throughout the apartment, how she always paused to watch the sunset regardless of her schedule. Their silences had shifted from strained to companionable. They still maintained separate bedrooms, separate lives, but the sharp edges between them had begun to soften. One evening, Ethan returned from work earlier than usual, pausing at the sight of Sophia surrounded by children's artwork spread across the living room floor. "Sorry for the chaos," she said, looking up. "These are submissions for the therapy center's opening exhibition." Instead of retreating to his office as he once would have, Ethan set down his briefcase and loosened his tie. "May I see?" Surprise flickered across her face. "Of course." He knelt beside her, studying a particularly vibrant painting of what appeared to be a family standing under a rainbow. "Javier, age 8, Sophia explained. "His father was deported last year. This is how he pictures their reunion." Ethan felt something constrict in his chest. "Will they be reunited?" "We're working with a legal aid foundation," she said. "There's hope." He moved to another drawing, jagged black lines surrounding a small figure. "And this one?" Zoe, age 6. She witnessed domestic violence. The black represents how fear feels to her. Sophia's voice softened. "Art gives children a voice when words fail them." Ethan picked up a third drawing, crude but colorful figures holding hands. "This reminds me of something I drew after my mother died, a stick figure family where she was still with us." The admission hung in the air between them, more personal than anything he'd previously shared. Sophia met his gaze. Did it help, drawing her? For a while. Until my father found it and said I needed to accept reality. Children shouldn't have. "To accept reality too quickly," she said gently. "Sometimes imagination is the only safe place they have." Later that night, after Sophia had gone to bed, Ethan found himself standing before the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching raindrops race down the glass as the city lights blurred into watery kaleidoscopes below. For the first time in decades, he allowed himself to remember the boy he'd been, before spreadsheets and acquisitions, before he'd learned to measure his worth in stock prices and square footage. A boy who drew pictures of his mother long after she was gone. The merger that had consumed him for months suddenly seemed hollow, a victory without meaning. What was he building, really? And for whom? The following day, he surprised his executive team by rejecting a lucrative acquisition target. "The human cost is too high," he stated, ignoring their shocked expressions. "We'll find another approach that doesn't require laying off their research division." Julian cornered him afterward. "Are you feeling all right, sir? This isn't like you." "Perhaps. It should be." Ethan replied. At home that evening, he found a note from Sophia saying she'd be late. Emergency session with a new child at the hospital. Without analyzing his actions, Ethan found himself in the kitchen attempting to cook dinner. By the time Sophia returned, rain-soaked and weary, he had produced a passable pasta dish. "You cooked?" she asked, clearly stunned. "Tried to," he admitted, gesturing to the burnt garlic bread. "Results are mixed." Her laughter, genuine and warm, filled the kitchen, and Ethan found himself smiling in response. Over dinner, she told him about the child she'd been working with, a girl who hadn't spoken since witnessing a shooting 3 months earlier. "Today, she whispered her name to me. Just once, but it's progress." The pride and hope in Sophia's voice stirred something within him. "You're remarkable," he said quietly. She looked up, caught off guard by the sincerity in his tone. "It's the children who are remarkable. I just provide safe space." "You provide that here too," he found himself saying. "This apartment, it never felt like home until you arrived." The admission hung between them, honest and unplanned. Sophia set down her fork, studying him with eyes that somehow saw beyond his carefully constructed facade. "What's happening?" "Ethan?" He considered deflecting, retreating behind the walls that had protected him for so long. Instead, he chose truth. "I'm questioning everything. My priorities, my legacy, the man I've become." He met her gaze directly. "And I'm realizing our arrangement has become more to me than I anticipated." Rain drummed against the windows, filling the silence that followed his confession. Sophia reached across the table, her fingers lightly touching his. "More to me, too," she admitted softly. Neither pushed further that night, both aware of a threshold crossed, a new territory entered without maps or guarantees. But as they sat together afterward, watching the storm through the windows, Ethan felt a sensation he hadn't experienced since childhood. Hope, fragile but persistent, like the first. Green shoots after winter's end. Garden of second chances. May arrived with unexpected warmth, coaxing cherry blossoms into early bloom across the city. The Reed Art Therapy Center prepared for its grand opening in the Bronx, while at Horizon Technologies, rumors circulated about the CEO's transformed management style. Ethan stood in the center's main room, watching Sophia direct volunteers hanging children's artwork along freshly painted walls. Sunlight streamed through large windows, a feature he'd insisted on when reviewing the architectural plans. "The lighting is perfect," he observed as she approached. "Your suggestion," she acknowledged with a smile. "Though I'm still surprised, you canceled meetings in Tokyo to be here today." "This matters more," he said simply. 6 months into their marriage of convenience, everything had changed while nothing had officially changed. They still maintained separate bedrooms, still honored the terms of their arrangement. Yet each day, the invisible line between contract and choice blurred further. They worked side by side through the afternoon, Ethan hanging artwork while Sophia arranged supplies and furniture. When a delivery truck arrived with art tables, he rolled up his sleeves and helped unload, ignoring the surprise of workers who recognized the billionaire in casual clothes. "Ms. Reed," called one of the volunteers, "where should we put the donor plaque?" Sophia glanced at Ethan, a question in her eyes. "Your center, your decision," he said. "In the entrance," she decided. "But just the center name, not the donors. This space isn't about recognition." Later, as sunset painted the sky in hues of amber and rose, they found themselves alone in the completed center. Tomorrow it would fill with children's voices and activity. Tonight it stood peaceful and full of possibility. "Thank you," Sophia said, turning to face him. "Not just for the funding, but for understanding why this matters." "I'm the one who should be grateful," Ethan replied, his voice low and earnest. "You've shown me a different way to measure success." The air between them charged with unspoken feelings. For weeks, they'd been circling closer, sharing meals, conversations, dreams, everything except the final truth of what had grown between them. Our agreement ends next month, Sophia said carefully. Have you thought about what happens then? Ethan took a deep breath. I have a proposal, but not here. He glanced at his watch. There's somewhere I'd like to take you first. An hour later, they arrived at a secluded property in the Hudson Valley, a historic estate surrounded by sprawling gardens just beginning their spring revival. What is this place? Sophia asked as they walked along stone paths between flowering shrubs. It belonged to my mother's family, Ethan explained. I've owned it for years but rarely visit. It always felt too full of ghosts. He led her to a garden pavilion overlooking the river, where to Sophia's surprise, a small table had been set with dinner and flickering candles. You planned this, she realized. For once in my life, I wanted something to be about more than efficiency. As the stars emerged above them, Ethan spoke of his childhood, the happy years before his mother's illness, the coldness that followed, the lessons in ambition that replaced lessons in joy. Sophia shared her own story, her parents' divorce, her father's diagnosis, her broken engagement to a man who'd seen her as a stepping stone to connections in the art world. When I agreed to marry you, she confessed, I thought I was making another strategic mistake, using one relationship to solve problems created by another. And now? He asked, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. Sophia reached across the table, taking his hand. Now I'm wondering if what began as strategy might have become the most authentic thing in my life. Ethan's fingers tightened around hers. The night I was ill, you said no one should face darkness alone. I've been alone most of my life, Sophia. By choice, by habit, by fear. Until you. He stood, drawing her up with him, and led her to a garden, bench beneath a flowering cherry tree. The contract ends next month, he said. I don't want to renew it. Pain flickered in her eyes, quickly masked. I understand. No, he said gently, taking both her hands. I don't want a contract anymore. I want a marriage. A real one. The moonlight silvered her stunned expression. Ethan, I love you, he said, the words new and fragile on his tongue. Not for what you can do for my image or the company. I love your kindness, your strength, your ability to see beauty where others see only brokenness. You've taught me that true. Wealth isn't measured in acquisitions, but in connections. Tears gathered in Sophia's eyes. The Ice King of Tech melted at last? Transformed, he corrected, reaching to brush a tear from her cheek. If you'll have me. I fell in love with you somewhere between your fever dreams and burnt garlic bread, she confessed with a watery laugh. I've been afraid to hope it could be real. It is, he promised, more real than anything I've built or bought. Their first kiss beneath the cherry blossoms felt like both an ending and a beginning, the conclusion of one chapter and the opening of another filled with possibility. 1 year later, the Reed Blake Foundation opened its doors, merging Ethan's business acumen with Sophia's vision for healing through art. The penthouse gained color, warmth, and eventually, the sounds of a child's laughter. A little girl from the center whose parents had died, who found in Ethan and Sophia the family she'd lost. The business world still marveled at how Ethan Blake, once known for his ruthless pursuit of profit, had redirected his company toward humanitarian innovation. Closer observers noted the subtle changes in the man himself, the ease of his smile, the warmth in his eyes when he looked at his wife, the gentle patience he showed their daughter. Are you happy? Sophia asked him one evening as they stood on their terrace, watching the city lights emerge. Ethan drew her close, remembering the cold, empty life he'd once believed was all he deserved or wanted. I spent years building an empire of glass and steel, he said softly. You showed me how to build a home instead." In the garden of second chances they had planted together, love continued to bloom, unexpected, unplanned, and more valuable than all the wealth in the world.